안녕하세요. Chloe and I had the pleasure of wine tasting here at Heron Hill Wineries at the Finger Lakes in New York. And they also gave us a private tour of the winemaking process with their winemaker, Jordan. And here is the full video from that interview. Now, if you want to just catch the Finger Lakes video, you can just click right here. But here it is. I just want to apologize in advance for the video work. It was kind of my first interview, so there was a lot to learn and I learned a lot. Hope you enjoy it. So now we are gonna do a tour around the winery and we're joined with Jordan. Jordan, what's your main role here?
I'm the winemaker here.
Awesome.
So, that sounds like it's a really cool role, but it just typically means we clean stuff. Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, winemaking, there's different types of winemaking. The winemaking that we really want to do is try to be as, hands off and let the grapes speak as much as possible on their own. And that just means having a, clean environment in which they're going through. But, obviously it's shuffling things around. We got barrels all over the place and racking and pressing and it's busy. But so my role is to maintain the cellar and get things in bottle, and then people that are a lot smarter than me can go and sell it. Yeah.
The wines that we had though, just if people were to taste it, I think they would sell on its own.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I mean,
it.
it's a labor of love. I mean, we love doing what we do, and it's, we have great fruits. The owner's been growing grapes since 1972 here in the Finger Lakes. Does a wonderful job, and that's our main vineyard, Source Angle Vineyard, which is over at Canandaigua Lake. If you have grapefruit, it makes my life a whole lot easier. So, I mean, this is just kind of like the center of our cellar. So it's kind of roadblocked going this way, but you can see the barrels and everything, how they're stacked. So the reason why we have barrels down on one level, you can see on the right there, those are stacked up how they would normally be, but during fermentation, because we ferment several white wines, Chardonnay, some Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris. We're actually doing a trial with some Gewürztraminer and Gruner Veltliner in barrel this year. So I mean, when you ferment the white wine in barrels, you ferment it in there, and then we will pull it out of the barrel and then put it right back in. You're getting it off what's called the lees, which is like the old expired yeast cells and all that kind of stuff that fall on the bottom. Some years we leave them in there, some years we don't. It depends on the type of vintage and what we feel. That's why they're on one level, and why a lot of these are called bungs that are at the top of the barrels. That's why they're upside down, because it creates a lot of gas and everything. So if I have these proper way in on the fermented barrels, it'll hit the ceiling. It'll fire out like a cork.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so these ones here are some Bac Noir that just got put into barrel, but these are done fermenting, so that's why they can just kind of sit here. Then these will get stacked and put away. But we'll take a brief little walk down here, and hopefully we don't get sprayed by anything.
The yeast that you use for the winemaking here, is it natural yeast or manufactured yeast?
It's about half and half. I mean, in a perfect world, we will use natural yeast that just come on the grapes and it'll ferment on its indigenous yeast. Some years, this year is one of those years. It's a challenging vintage. There's a lot of rain. When there's a lot of rain and it's kind of a miserable sort of atmosphere for grapes, they start to break down on the vine, they split. And then you have to really kind of rush the process to try to make sure that you get control of it. You also don't know what all of the vineyards are doing. Our estate vineyards, we farm those organically, but some of the vineyards that we do get fruit from aren't organic. So in a year like this year, I get nervous about anything they put on there. So it might have killed natural yeast, and then we have other issues. And this year, less native yeast, but most years, it's predominantly native.
Okay.
And the other room is where most of the fermentations are actually happening. So you can see there's ice on the one tank there.
Oh yeah.
So the tanks that have kind of ripples around them or dots, they have what's called cooling jackets, and all the ones in the other room have those. And so what it is essentially we can cool the tanks, because fermentation creates a lot of warmth, but you want to have cooler fermentation so that you can preserve those aromatics. So we just cool the tanks. These ones don't have cooling, so these just are for settling and blending, and after fermentation is done, they can go into these for a little while. But yeah, we do have three that have the cooling on the end there. The one that has the ice on it is because that's for our semi-sweet Rieslings. So yeast will only kind of survive up until around like 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. If it gets lower than that, then it'll kill off the yeast. So we have that down to -1, so it's below freezing level for water, but alcohol in there makes it so it's not freezing. But that stops the yeast where it has more sugar left over still in it.
So are most of the wine or all the wine like cold temperature fermentation, or is there any wines
Most
you do
of the
here that's
white
hot?
wines are, most of the red wines are fairly warm. White wines will range anywhere in between 12 and 17 degrees Celsius. For our red wines, they will get upwards of 26 to 30 degrees. So cooler fermentations will preserve aromatics and fresh acidity. Warm fermentations will give more body and weight. He's cleaning part of the press. So this is like when the fruit comes in, it goes through that destemmer over there. So the grapes go through the destemmer, and they'll go into a pump. If it's white grapes, they'll go into this press here at that time. And essentially inside there's like a big balloon, and then there's perforations on the outside. It's actually cleaning the channels. So those are from the inside of the press, and they go over some holes which will block the skins from falling out.
Oh.
But it pushes the juice through there, then we can take the juice into here. For red wines, it'll go directly from the destemmer into a tank or one of these bins that are all over the place because they ferment on their skin. Then once they're done, then they will go into the press, force the press. For white wine, you typically don't use the skin,
Okay.
and rosé you don't. So like, if you're thinking about rosé is made typically from red grapes.
Oh,
But it's, no.
Oh.
So rosé is typically made from red grapes, and the reason why it's not very dark is because you take it away from its skins either right away or very early on. So all of the color that is in red wine is all from the skins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's definitely something new to me.
Yeah.
I always thought rose was a mix.
No.
Oh.
There are places that'll do what they call blush, or sometimes they call it where they blend it, but no, it's supposed to be red grapes. But
Oh.
just don't less time on the skins.
I'm learning so much today.
I'll tell you inside this destemmer. Such grapes that go into here, into the top there. They fall, and there's paddles in the center of this, and as this turns, those paddles will be spinning, and it knocks the grapes off the stems because it spins this way. Then the stems fall out the back, which will have a bin underneath here. The stems will fall out there, but as the stems are getting pushed back with these paddles, it knocks the grapes through these holes,
Oh.
which then this piece here acts as an auger, which pushes the grapes along here, then falls down into the bottom there, and then they'll fall out into this pump.
So what's this?
This is just a waste bin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is actually the bin that I was talking about where we'll put the stems here. And then when we're done pressing, we need to get the skins out of there. So that same door that we stand underneath, we open the door and we rotate it, and all the skins will fall into here.
Oh.
Then we just take that, and there's a tractor down there that has a spreader on the back. We just dump it in there, and then we take it, we spread it in the field as nutrition for hay. You can see people down there. It looks like they're finishing up, but they're picking down there.
So is it all hand-picked then?
No, but I'd say like 50-50.
Leslie was telling us earlier that one of the reserve was made with the Rieslings
Yes.
right there.
Yep, that's part of what they're picking right now. Yep.
So that batch of land,
Yeah.
how much wine can you actually get out of that? How many bottles?
Within the Riesling that's here, there's 10 acres of Riesling, 1,800 to 2,000 cases.
And case
Yeah.
is like, how many bottles is in each case then?
12 bottles. In a year, we'll make between 20 and 30,000 cases total.
Wow.
From all the different vineyard sites. So yeah, multiply by 12, between 240 and 360,000 bottles.
What makes this region like special for winemaking? Like what is specific about this region in terms of like maybe the climate, the soil?
The lakes. The lakes are the big thing. We have a lot, I mean, the soils here are great. They're very well drained, so you get some good concentration, richness, but you can also get, sort of milling components. It helps to really kind of get ripe fruit flavors, as well as getting some tertiary flavors, like it's almost kind of like a saline-like characteristic to a lot of them, depending on the soil type that it's in. And where we get a lot of shale, where it's been decomposed here, then you can get some of that. But the lakes are really the big thing, so they moderate this area. If you're driving along, once you get up on the plateau, so like you see the top of the hill there, between the top of that hill and Seneca Lake, which is about another 10 miles further east, you can't grow grapes. You can't grow wine grapes. You can still grow a lot of the native varieties that are used, like Niagara, Concord, a lot of juice grapes. But the grapes like Riesling, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, they don't grow very well up there because it'll get too cold. These lakes, they moderate the valleys that are going down towards the lake. Particularly in the winter, it would get too cold without them. But because of those lakes, it'll kind of keep the temperatures within check here so that we can keep those varieties. Because those varieties are a little bit more sensitive to the winters. So the fact that those lakes exist is really what helps us. But it helps moderate the temperature in the summer as well, where you get like those hot peaks. It'll kind of cool it down. And the slopes that we have going down towards the lakes are also important. You know, it makes wildly different wine between here and the fields on the other side of the lake, right? Because on this side where we are, we're on the west side of the lake, so we're facing towards the east. We get all of the morning sunlight, so it dries out the fruit early on. So if you have morning dew, it dries out, so it's a little bit, I guess, easier to grow grapes in that sense, that you don't have the same disease pressure because it dries out so much earlier. But in the afternoon, like getting the afternoon sunlight, oftentimes stuff that's grown on the east side of the lakes and has west-facing exposure, that's where you could grow a lot more red varieties as well, and they're richer and riper because that afternoon hot sunlight gives really kind of those riper flavors to the varieties that need more heat, essentially. So yeah, everywhere, but the lakes are really the driving factor. Without the lakes, this industry doesn't exist here.
Now I understand why, like when I looked at the map, it's basically just like in between the lakes or like right next to the lakes.
As soon as you're outside of the valleys of the lakes, vinifera disappears, which are like the classic wine grape varieties.
Actually, I'm really curious about this. Are winemaking grapes like grapes that you actually can eat also, or are they actually very different?
There's a lot of seeds in them. They tend to be smaller. They're really sweet. They're delicious, but you know, for me, I've got little kids. My little kids, every time I bring them grapes for them to eat, they get annoyed because of seeds. Oh. So it all depends on who it is.
Okay.
Right? I mean, if you don't mind seeds and spitting seeds out all over the place, then absolutely you can eat them. They're delicious.
Like, so this harvest, right? Yep. Basically, today's the last day, which is kind of cool that we're here on the last day for the grape harvesting. How long does it take to get this harvest out to, like, what's your first bottle of wine that would be ready to go and the last bottle from this harvest?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of funny. So the first bottle will come from some of the last harvesting. There's a couple of the red grapes that we picked will be going towards rosé, and that will be the first stuff bottled. So from now until bottle is going to be, what is it today? So it'll be 2.5 months.
Oh,
until that. Yeah. The rosé, we'll aim to have it. I mean, maybe even faster. Depends on how ambitious we feel. We'll try to have the rosé in bottle maybe right before Christmas. If not, as soon as we come back and we're working full steam in the new year, it'll be mid-January, we'll try to get the rosé done. Whereas some of the other varieties, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, Chosen Spot, which was the Bordeaux blend you might have had up there, those will be 2 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Why does it take that long?
So with rosé, we just want to preserve fresh fruit, essentially. So we want to do a nice, cool fermentation, but as soon as that fermentation is done, filter it, bottle it, you're done. Nothing to do. Whereas the reds, they'll spend a longer time to sit on their skins, then we press, then it goes through what's called malolactic fermentation, which is just transitioning malic acid, which is the main acid in, say, Granny Smith apples that is really tart. It turns it into lactic acid, so very soft. That's a process that could take even a couple months. Depends on how cold the cellar is, really, because it needs to be somewhat warm to do that. But then it'll also go in barrel, and it sits in barrel for about 18 months. And the reason that you do that is those tannins, the really gripping part to those red wine, they're really, really gripping right now. So, I mean, they're not really enjoyable to drink directly out of the fermentation. So when you put them in barrel, that barrel, it's porous, as opposed to the stainless steel tanks that we use for, say, Riesling and rosé and Gewürztraminer and all that kind of stuff. In the barrels, it's porous, so that little bit of oxygen helps to soften out those tannins and round out the wine.
Oh, so is that why, like, when some people open the red wines, like, oh, let it breathe, gives that oxygen?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat, but so that oxygen will also just help to release some of the aromatics early on.
Okay.
But I don't know. I've always been a fan of just pouring it in my glass, and it'll start to get some oxygen while I drink my glass. And I like, it does change things, no question. But I like to watch that progression in my glass, so I don't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is the same sort of idea. It's just softening the wine out by sitting in barrels.
I've learned so much in this one, because we've been to other wineries before, but just, in the tasting room.
Yeah.
So this is like, that's such a deep dive. I'm learning so much about wines that I think it will change what we're looking for, and
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
like appreciation of those
Cool.
wines. What is your favorite wine then? Like, are you a white Riesling, red wine?
I
Like, what
mean,
is?
I'm definitely a Riesling fan. Riesling and Pinot Noir tend to be my like real go-tos. That's part of what drove me back to coming to the Finger Lakes. I was in a warmer area before that just didn't do much Riesling, but I love it. Or Pinot. Both are cool climate grapes. They're elegant. They're complex. They're exciting. So yeah, I'd say Riesling and Pinot Noir.
What we had today. So
Oh, cool.
I mean, we enjoyed all of it.
Awesome.
So we really loved it. And I do remember my last question now.
Yes.
It's for Heron Hill's Winery.
Yeah.
Like, so what's the vision for Heron Hill?
That's largely driven by John, the owner, and essentially he wants to be a benchmark for the region. So he wants to have some of the best Riesling in America. You know, he's a wine lover.
Yeah.
That's what got him into it, or wanting to own a winery. So being a wine lover makes it so that he just wants to have the very best wine produced. So vision is to, sustainably and ideally organically grow fabulous fruits, mess with it as little as possible, but make, some benchmark Riesling, Pinot Noir, Blanc Frankish, Cabernet Franc.
But if you're talking about benchmark, the wines that we had though definitely sets a benchmark, or
right,
at least
cool.
for us, right? Because we're gonna do other wine tasting while
Yeah.
we're here, and this is our first place, so I think that benchmark has been set.
All right, cool.
Because we've had Riesling, we've been in New Zealand. My wife and I have been in New Zealand,
Yeah,
and we've also had some really good Riesling there.
yeah,
And having it here just was like, wow, I never knew this was here in
Yeah.
the U.S.
Yeah.
And I lived just a state away
yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing that this is right here all along. We're really excited to keep trying more and discover more about
Well,
this.
thanks for coming in.
Yeah,
Finger
thank
Lakes
you.
and checking it out. Yeah, for sure.
And thank you so much, for showing us around and explaining
pleasure.
all these things. I've learned,
Yeah.
and we've learned so much.
All right, cool.
All right, thank you so much,
Thank
Jordan.
you so much.
We hoped you learned a lot about the winemaking process from this interview. We learned so much that we never knew about wine before, and it's given us a new appreciation to wine. So, if you liked the video and want to support us, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, and we'll see you in the next video. Oh, yeah, that's good. Oh, I'm totally gonna get the Asian glow.